What is up, YouTube? It's Chris, and today we're going to be talking about something that might be uncomfortable for some people, but we're going to be talking about masculinity. And this video is for maybe my young brothers who are raised in single parent, predominantly raised by a woman, and may not have experienced a lot of masculinity in their life, right? We're going to break it down into several sections. I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible, but I'm going to talk about my experience with masculinity and what I had to do to improve my own masculine traits, right? I was raised by a single mother, right? I had a on again, off again stepfather in the house, but didn't really learn much from him in terms of masculinity. And what I've grown to understand is, by being raised by a single mother, I took on certain tendencies from feminine energy. And what I mean by that is I wasn't acting feminine per se, but I would kind of see my mom act from an emotional base when I was younger. Like if something was to happen, she would kind of react emotionally, sometimes overreacting, and it's not to her fault. She's a woman and she's acting from a feminine space. But this is something that I observed as a kid, and I kind of internalized. And growing up, not having a positive male role model after my grandfather passed away when I was young, I would kind of act out in what I thought was being masculine, right? And you can kind of see it in pop culture today. If you look at like rap videos and things like that, we are acting out in what we see as masculinity. But I learned my masculinity from, being outside on the street, and what I thought masculinity was, which was, fighting with my fist, or, necessarily being tough and, womanizing, having multiple women or hopping from woman to woman to woman. And having lots of women back in the day was my idea of what masculinity was, being able to, conquer sexually a woman, and those are all traits that are dysfunctional, right? Constantly fighting, overreacting, you getting pissed off because a dude says something about you and now you're fighting. That's a dysfunctional trait, right? Constantly womanizing, having multiple women, playing back and forth and stuff and things like that. That's a dysfunctional trait, right? Those behaviors usually don't lead to positive, fulfilling outcomes in life. And that's why I'm saying they're a dysfunctional trait. So what I realized is that my life took several hits, living like that. Constantly fighting people because you think that, nobody's going to play with you and, you're a dominant man or whatever. You're not going to win every fight if you fading a whole bunch of people and, you're risking your employment, you're risking your freedom, you're risking your health, right? Because I wasn't winning all these fights. I would lose some too. And I got broken teeth to prove that, right? But I was hard-headed. So I had to realize that I was not masculine in a positive way. I think they would call that toxic masculinity. I hate to use that term, but I wasn't masculine in a positive way. I wasn't masculine in a way that would build the people up around me. I wasn't masculine in a way that was a protector. I wasn't even killed. I would fly off at the handle. I had a bad temper and things like that. So I had to really study what masculinity was. And I was in the military. So fortunately, I had a mentor that I looked up to. If you're watching this, his name was Sergeant Dukes. And he kind of saw me being in a turmoil state. Hold on, let me switch the video. And he kind of took me under his wing. He definitely took me under his wing. And what he would do was he would question. He knew I was rebellious, so he didn't come with me like I'm preaching to you, but he would ask me questions like, what would you do if this happened to you? And I'd be like, back in the day, it was just like solving problems with my fists. And he was like, well, do you think that's the smartest way to do things? And, he wasn't perfect in his own right, but at the same time, as he was asking me certain things, he would be like, one day you're going to see things from a different perspective. It wasn't until I started gaining knowledge of self, studying people like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, who had his own issues, and studying strong black male personality types. Even on the internet, there's definitely some great videos, and it's weird, and I hate to say this, but I had to study black men virtually. I had to study masculinity virtually. I had to study what that was and what that was in terms of being a black masculine male. And, still to this day, I'm not perfect, right? Because most of the things that we learn, that we display as adults, we've learned in childhood. So I then had to undo a lot of these things, a lot of these behaviors that I learned, and realized and do a lot of, I guess, what they call shadow work, which is working on some of the negative aspects of your personality and not kicking those negative aspects out, but then embracing them and realizing that they exist till this day. So I urge, if you're like a sister watching this video and you are, you maybe have a boy child or whatever, you have to understand that that child needs to be around positive masculine energy, whether they get that on the field from their coach, whether they get that from, a man you decide to bring into your life that's going to display that energy to them. They need that. It's not something, they can't be raised by YouTube, these little YouTube short videos and watching this weird stuff on the internet, because they're going to come out not knowing some certain value. So I just wanted to put that video out there. I think that I touched on all points. I kind of came with some recommendations, which is, put your kids in sports. If your kids don't like sports, there are male mentorship programs out there where you can get a mentor for your kid. But also be very careful with the type of men that you bring into your life, right? Don't bring in men that just satisfy you physically, right? Or satisfy your fancy. You have to choose a man that is going to be a masculine male model for your children, right? And sometimes I think women can sell themselves short in this department. They find a man that they love and, he's great in all these boxes, but not in the masculine mentorship box. And that's a key pillar if you have children, right? So I urge you to really be selective. And I can understand that, as somebody who's been out there, the pickings can be slim, but we do exist. And I just wanted to make that video to talk about the importance of positive masculinity. I'm striving to be the best masculine figure I can, and I'm not perfect. I still deal with some of these behaviors, like where I overreact with things, but now I can identify that that's happening. So with that being said, if you agree with this, if you disagree with this, if you think that I'm putting out malarkey, be sure to put that in the comments. If you're somebody who had to learn masculinity from someone other than your father, put that in the comments. I'm open to hearing all of your perspectives. All right. Peace.